Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Tuesday, July 19th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, calls intensified for legislation that would add more seats to the U.S. Supreme Court with the need to add balance when taking on issues like Roe versus Wade and gun permits. Meanwhile, jury selection continues for a former Trump advisor as a judge determines his level of involvement in the January 6th insurrection. Then a viral video has many people furious, showing a black female EMT getting arrested on the job. Did an investigator abuse his power and position? We have that story.
Plus, Rolling Loud, Miami loses its opener. We'll tell you which rapper is replacing him. And was Drake detained in Sweden or not? We're going to let you know. We have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
A group of House Democrats are calling for legislation that would add 4 more seats to the U.S. Supreme Court. The group pointed to the need to break up the conservative wing of the High Court. They say to do that, more justices should be added. They pointed to the Roe v. Wade decision and the New York gun state permit ruling as the reason why liberals need to add balance to the court. Congressional Black Caucus member Hank Johnson is the lead sponsor of the 2021 Judiciary Act. He says the current conservative-dominated Supreme Court is putting the basic freedoms under assault. This bill is great, but it has little chances of becoming law. But it does illustrate that progressive Democrats are upset and they are trying to do something about what we're seeing with the majority conservative court. The decision to pack the court, I looked it up because I was curious, has this ever been done in United States history? And it's been done 7 times before. So it wouldn't be the first time if something like this were to happen. It would bring the total seat count to about 13. And adding justices would only take a majority. I say only as if they can agree on anything at any time. But it would take a majority of the House Democrats and House Senate just the Senate to pass it. And then the president would have to sign it. But Biden has already said that he does not agree with packing the court. So therefore, we're still at a standstill.
We see that a lot of times, that we end up at a standstill. But what's more importantly, Mimi, is adding balance. I really want to focus on adding balance because when we saw with Roe versus Wade, when you have so many people who are kind of clustered up together, then of course, like you said, we lose out. Also on gun permits, we lose out on things that are important to the black community. And when we helped Joe Biden get in office, he definitely made a lot of promises to us. And so I believe that whatever needs to happen in order for those who are going to fight for all Americans, whatever needs to happen in order for that to be done, it needs to be a non-starter.
Yeah, I agree. And 6 out of 9 were appointed by Republicans. We do know that. And think about when President Biden was trying to get someone in, and of course the GOP Senate, they went against it. That could have shifted a little bit, but we need to have balance. These are major decisions. Roe v. Wade, things of that nature. Like, we can't have it just depend on this group of people where we know there's no balance there, and that's going to be an ongoing problem. So, look, I don't know if it's going to change anything. It's great that the conversation came up, and it's good that Mimi pointed out that this has happened before. So
yeah, it's definitely happened before. So it's not like this would be setting a new precedent. We've seen it. It's happened before. And so I think what someone pointed out is that it could go either way, though. So if we do decide to stack the court and a Republican is in office, it could still go either way. And so they were pointing out that some of the justices that Trump picked, they were in their 50s. And so if we were going to do something like this, we need to make sure that the justices that we do choose were younger, and because the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. And so that way we could see them in there for a long time, and they could help bring balance, as you pointed out, Demi, for a long time to come.
Yeah, and I think that age is definitely something that needs to be considered, because there are a lot of industries, honestly, in the world where you have white men who stay in their positions forever, and they stay in power, and they're set in their own ways. And so bringing in some young, new, fresh talent never hurt anybody, because a lot of people that voted for Trump were those older white men stuck in their ways, gun laws, and they felt that way. Bringing in some people who are anti-Trump, who are or anti, whatever, pro-abortion, whatever, just some different ideas. It could help serve all people in America.
Different ideas, different minorities, different races, viewpoints, sexual orientations, just whatever.
Yes.
Just bringing in people that represent the United States. That would solve all the problems.
That is wonderfully put. Jury selection in the Steve Bannon contempt of Congress trial is in its second day. The former Trump advisor is facing criminal contempt charges after he refused to cooperate with the House January 6th committee's investigation into the insurrection. At the time of the riot, Bannon was not a House employee, a White House employee. 22 prospective jurors were identified during the hearing. Bannon is ridiculing the trial.
I think we'd have been more productive if we'd been on Capitol Hill in front of open mics addressing the nation with exactly all this nonsense, this show trial they've been putting up on Capitol Hill. It's nothing but a show trial. It's time they start having other witnesses. They can give other testimony other than what they've been putting up.
Live primetime testimony of the committee continues Thursday evening. When asked if the committee planned on calling Trump and former Vice President Pence to testify, committee chair Benny Thompson said it was a possibility. I love that now it's show trial. I love that now it's show trial when it's about you, right? When it's about other people, it's probably like, okay, let's see how this all turns out. But when you're to the fire, then it's show trial. I just want to recap one quick thing that we said there that was very important, that he wasn't officially a part of the Trump campaign on January 6th, but he was in contact with President Trump around the 2020 election. Another part is that he was in Washington, D.C. the day before the Capitol riot. That's also another piece to add on top of that he allegedly was trying to persuade lawmakers to vote against certifying Joe Biden's victory. So, yeah, we need you on that trial. We need to know a little bit more about this. I know for some reason he seems to think that you're not involved, but I love that the House committee is finding those people that you wouldn't really think like, no, let's talk to him right there. Let's see what he knows, and I think that there's something that they're going to find out about him.
Yeah, the truth is, and Bannon knows, is that he was a really big part, and he was one of the loudest voices for President Trump. He was spreading a lot of the lies about the fraud and everything else that was going on in 2020. And to your point, Demi, earlier that day, the day before the January 6th insurrection, he predicted on his podcast that all hell was going to break loose tomorrow. So he kind of had an idea of what was going to happen. And then not only that, there's an audio recording from October 31st, 2020, that's a couple days before the November election, where he had told President Trump to declare victory, even though all the votes wouldn't be in. The mail-in ballots that we know lean heavily Democratic were not going to be in. He told President Trump to declare victory. And so they knew what they were doing. He was part of what they were doing. And so he's just, as you pointed out, Demi, he's just now calling it a show trial because he's the one who is in the hot seat. Other than that, this would be a regular trial that someone else is going through.
This would have never happened if Trump wouldn't have called out all his people, all his followers to go there on January the 6th. We know what happened that day, right? I know we have to go through the motions, we have to do this. But at the end of the day, let's talk about this, man. When you talk about a show trial, when you talk about people that lost their lives, you talk about police officers that committed suicide afterwards. I mean, this changed our country forever, and it's not a show about it. This is a serious situation. So it's good he's on the seat, and we're hoping that we do get something out of this trial, because if we walk away where they say, okay, we found really nothing and we found nothing on Trump, how much energy is that going to give him to go for 2024? Sure. That's something we don't want.
They're going hard.
Oh, yeah. You already know. I feel like they're going hard already, but imagine if it comes back where they say, oh, we have no evidence.
But I also do believe that the committee needs to make sure, I said this when this first started, that they need to come back with some solid something. And it's not going to be an easy couple of days. They're going to have to do the research, but I'm really hoping that they come back with something solid, because we need Trump in jail at the end of the day. Absolutely.
All right, so it's days after the adjournment of Brittany Griner's trial in Russia. There is speculation over whether Griner could be swapped for a convicted arms dealer who is serving 25 years in a U.S. prison. The Kremlin is refusing to comment on the possible trade for Griner for Victor Bout, who is known as the Lord of War for the weapon dealing he did with rogue governments around the world. A spokesperson for the Russian government says Moscow was ready to work with the U.S. on a possible exchange and urged Washington to stop putting pressure on Russia. Experts on Russian law are comparing Griner's case to that of an American-Israeli woman detained for 10 months after airport police found a small amount of cannabis in her luggage.
And today is primary election day in Maryland, and a former Congressional Black Caucus member is trying to win back a seat she last held 5 years ago. Donna Edwards represented Prince George's County, one of the richest black counties in the country, for almost a decade. She is taking on former state attorney Glenn Ivey. Meanwhile, 10 Democrats in the state are duking it out to become the state's next governor. That includes 2 former Obama administration officials, Tom Perez, who was the former U.S. Labor Secretary. He's going up against John King Jr., who served as Secretary of Education.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has a fundraising advantage over his Democratic challenger, Charles Booker. Over the last 3 months, Paul has racked in $3.1 million, while Booker has only racked in $1.3 million. Now, Paul has $9 million in the bank, while Booker only has $900,000 in the bank. Booker, who is a former state lawmaker, says more money is critical to his race, while he believes he can win.
Ballot drop boxes did not contribute to any widespread problems with the 2020 presidential election. An Associated Press survey of state election officials across the nation did not reveal any cases of fraud, vandalism, or theft that could have affected Joe Biden's win over Donald Trump. The report is yet another source that refutes the former president's contention that the election was stolen. Drop boxes were used around the nation during the pandemic to cut down on people standing too close to one another on lines to vote. This month, the Wisconsin Supreme Court's conservative majority banned the use of ballot drop boxes for elections.
A Minnesota printing company is agreeing to settle a lawsuit filed by 2 former black employees who say the company ignored their complaints of racial harassment. The suit was filed with Minnesota Department of Human Rights. The department's probe found the employees reported racist comments and slurs were used against them by their white coworkers. Nothing ever happened. One employee was told to deal with it or leave, so that worker quit. The company will pay the employee $45,000.
Despite Governor Ron DeSantis and the GOP's war against so-called wokeness, Florida is paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to a company that creates racially sensitive studies that address social inequality and social change. MGT Consulting is run by a former Republican state representative who is working with the state's education department. The company has made recommendations about creating inclusive workplaces for taxpayer-funded groups. According to a Politico company, officials say that they have carefully chosen a team that is well-versed in critical race theory. Florida has reportedly paid the company $700,000 since DeSantis has took office.
Like most financial transactions, welfare benefits in Georgia are moving to debit cards. Commonly known as WIC, the program that provides food for low-income women, was scheduled to make its transition away from paper vouchers in 2020, but the state wasn't ready to go until this year. The state's debit card pilot program started earlier this month, and every recipient should have a card by the end of October. The debit cards will make it easier for women to buy what they need. They can use the card for small individual purchases rather than use a voucher and be forced to spend all of it at one time.
And a Georgia school district will allow some employees who aren't certified police officers to carry guns in school. But Cobb County's school district won't allow teachers to be armed. The 4-2 vote in favor of arming some employees was split across partisan lines during last week's vote. The vote comes weeks after the Uvalde school massacre. Opponents of the decision shouted shame after the vote. Georgia schools have been able to arm teachers and other employees under a state law that passed in 2014, but only a handful of school districts have done so. Most of those districts are in small counties.
An African-American activist in San Francisco is calling for more action in his city to crack down on the violent behavior of homeless people. So Reverend Amos Brown called for the crackdown after James Spignola was beaten severely by 2 men with a wooden plank. Police say Spignola asked the man to move away from a community center's front doorsteps, and police say Spignola is recovering, currently in a hospital. Major cities in California have been dealing with a homeless crisis for several years. Police say drug addiction and mental illness are contributing to violent attacks by some of the homeless.
A Rochester, New York police officer has been suspended with pay after he was filmed manhandling a black female EMT as she was helping a patient last week. And investigators say the altercation started after the EMT's vehicle door hit the cop's parked car. The officer car was parked in front of the ambulance bay at Strong Memorial Hospital. Sources say the cop demanded the EMT's identification, but the ambulance worker told him she needed to get the patient inside the emergency room first. Neither person has been identified. The video shows the cops aggressively handcuffing the EMT worker inside the emergency room. A supervisor eventually intervened, and the woman was not charged with the crime. So we're at an emergency room. This is a police call. It's not even his. The state pays for it. And instead of coming and say, can I assist you with the patient, you want to take this black woman to the ground and manhandle her. Another disgusting thing that we have to deal with, every time we feel like we've covered every category when it comes to disrespecting people of color, there's a new one. Because this is the first for me hearing of this, right? Yeah. So if a police officer is going to feel this way when someone is doing their job trying to save a life, imagine what he's going to do if he just pulls someone over. That's a problem that we have within our system.
It sounds like he has some anger management issues, because you opening the door and then that causes you to rush in and arrest someone who's trying to save someone else's life.
Okay, this story has really, really, really upset me today, and I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about it. So the crazy part about this is that this police investigator, he parked in an ambulance bay. You park where the ambulance are supposed to park, right? So that's the first thing. You were in a place that you were not supposed to park. So he got upset because I guess she swung the door open, like I said, and it hit his car. But the fact that you are in the wrong place, you're in a hospital, could be a life or death situation for a person that could be potentially fighting for their lives. And if that person would have died, maybe bled to death while you're taking her over, that could be another lawsuit. I'm really happy that the EMT is going to file a lawsuit against the city of Rochester because they deserve it. The violence at the hands of black people in Rochester police is on another level. And so they deserve this lawsuit. And my other thing is, it was an accident. It was literally an accident. She's trying to do her job, save someone's life. How dare you go hands-on in a hospital when a person is literally trying to fight for their lives right now? Exactly. How dare you do that? Agreed. You know, and I hope that he is suspended and never returns to the force.
I mean, it sounds like he's on paid administrative leave, which always happens.
Always.
Right? It's the first thing. I mean, even when you have the video, they still say, well, we need to do the investigation, because what I saw was this man manhandling this young woman right here as we're watching it, who was literally just trying to do her job. So paid administrative leave, no, he needs to be fired.
And it's not even that she was just trying to do her job. She literally told him, I'm going to deal with you after, but right now I'm going to deal with the patient first. It's not like I'm just trying to blow you off to go and
give me
take
a
lunch break.
Is what she said.
Right, she's like, let me go do my job and save this person's life right here. Way more important.
Way more important. All right, the mother of a suburban Chicago man working as a security guard is suing police for $7.5 million after her son was gunned down by a cop who mistook him for a suspect. Beatrice Robinson is suing the Midlothian Police Department for the 2018 killing of her son, Jamel Robinson. Witnesses say two groups of men were fighting at the bar when it escalated into a shooting. Jamel jumped in to hold down the gunman, and the witnesses say the officer, he came into the bar with an AR-15 rifle and pointed it at Jamel. People at the bar told the officer Jamel was the security guard, but he ignored them. Cops say Jamel refused to put down the weapon he took from the gunman, and that's when the officer shot and killed him. The officer has not been charged in Jamel's death. This is very, very, very unfortunate. The mother is saying, and it reminded me of you, because you often say how much money can you put on a human life? She does not want the money. She's saying there's no amount of money that's going to bring back her son. This man was killed while doing his job. He was a security officer. He was killed while breaking up a fight, and he was shot 4 times in the back. Ridiculous.
Yeah, very sad. And you think about, I talked to some people about this situation. They're like, well, but he could have put down a weapon. Well, he's in a situation, adrenaline's high, right? He's just doing his job, so he doesn't feel guilty for holding to the gun. And what, he's supposed to toss it to you? Well, he doesn't want the guy he's holding down to get a hand on it. So he was doing what he thought was a smart thing, and it took his life.
Took his life. And there was other people in the bar where this happened that were telling the officer, he's the security guard, like trying to have the cop put down his AR-15. I mean, it's just like, what else do we need to do? We can't even do our job.
You know, when you win the lottery, for example, right, and you get maybe $5 million or $10 million, that's it's extra money, right? You won that, that's luck. But $5 million, $10 million, $20 million in exchange for your loved one's life, the fact that she is going on ceremony and saying, I don't want the money, that is really a strong statement to say, hey, you know what? You can't buy us. You cannot buy my son's life back with just cutting a check. And it's a very strong statement.
It's a very strong statement. And I know we have to wrap this up, but until there are real consequences for your actions, for their actions, right? They are writing checks from the taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
And until police have real consequences for stuff like this is why it will continue. Because it's not coming out of their pocket. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to jail, or if they're fired, then they go to another police station and they get another job. So until there are real consequences, these are the things that will continue to happen.
Their life will go on.